Hi, welcome to this breakdown video of People Are Strange. Now I'm going to walk you through each of the elements of the song in this video and show you what instruments, plugins, samplers, sample packs or libraries that I used so you can get a bit of inspiration for writing your own songs. Now this song was inspired heavily by the sounds of Blade Runner. David Weiner, the director of In Search of Tomorrow, asked us, he referenced Blade Runner soundtrack quite heavily when we were discussing how the score would sound. So I actually found, let me see here, I found a really great pack that's Soundrunner is the name of the company, and they actually recreated a lot of the sounds from the from the Blade Runner score. Now this was perfect. I mean, you're not always going to be able to find packs that allow you to recreate the sounds. You'll often have to do it from scratch. But when you're doing something like a sci-fi score, it really helps during the planning process to create sort of your own sounds influenced by films. And I got very lucky here that I found this pack that actually, I mean, it covered a lot of the sounds from the original Vangelis score. Now, I'll just walk you through the track. It's quite a heavy sounding song. It actually doesn't sound like you would expect for a sci-fi track. I just wanted to go a bit heavy and create something that was quite synth heavy. I mean, I've done a few tracks like that on the score. I wanted this to sound like a band, and so it's heavily made up of bass and heavy drums, and then some of the sci-fi synth sounds on top. I'll just get stuck in here. I'll solo the drums here, and I'll play a little bit. I mean, the drums are very simple. And if I could go back, I would probably record with a live drummer, maybe with Bryson, our drummer, and actually, go into the details with the drums. It wasn't necessary for the documentary to do that. It was cheaper to program them in, but I mean, they are as simple as you can get. And I actually used the Logic drum kit here. I mean, there are a bunch of drum libraries. EZdrummer's probably one of my favorites, and they've got a metal pack that you can purchase, and I like to use that on our music because it's quite influenced by metal music. But for this track, I mean, and for any track, even for whether it's a demo or a commercial track, the Logic drummer is brilliant. I mean, what they do is they record each hit of the drums one by one at different dynamics, and then when you trigger that on your drum pad or on your keyboard, it recreates that. As I mean, it sounds just like a real drummer, and recording drums is quite a difficult thing to do, to learn to do, practice, and it's also quite expensive. And unless you're a drummer really looking to record your own drums, I personally prefer to program drums, or to at least hire a drummer to send MIDI, and then you can put the MIDI through your own drum sounds. It allows a lot more flexibility with shaping the sound of the drums. I mean, there's not really much to go through. I used the same drum kit, and I've got each of the tracks separated out here so that you can pan and add effects to each part of the drums. The next part of the song is the strings, and I think I used the Chamber Grid, Oliver Arnold's Chamber Evolutions, and I think I've talked about this in a previous video. You can randomly click parts of this grid and it'll trigger different types of string playing, and then you can play a chord through it. Let me show you. I mean, this is beautiful. This could be its own song. And we use this heavily on a lot of our music, whether it's a lead chords or background string effects. I've got a second one here. I mean, that creates so much tension, which is needed in horror and sci-fi music. I think the second one's probably playing something similar, but higher up in the range. That widens things out. Just creates that wider space in the stereo width. That's quite a good technique when you're trying to write strings. Write something in the lower range, and then if you wanted to sort of open up and expand, you can quite literally copy and paste the same thing, the MIDI, and move it up an octave. I mean, I'm pretty sure these are probably the same chords. Yeah. Okay. Next, we've got this synth ambient. So this is probably quite a lead part. I created this in Massive, yeah. We do write quite a bit of ambient music, and it's good to just create your own synths. And I created this for another project, and I just found that it. Let me just show you. Just sounds beautiful, ethereal. It's got a lot of reverb. It sounds huge, and with ambience, you want it to sound huge and also small at the same time. Next, we've got Repro 5. I think this is actually, yeah, this is a Dawn Chorus. This is actually a Radiohead, or not Radiohead, Tom York pack that I bought. Someone recreated some Tom York sounds. And again, I absolutely love Radiohead, and the fact that we live in a world where I can either recreate some of their synth sounds or purchase a pack that's been made by somebody else that quite literally sounds exactly like the sound on the record. It's brilliant. And I layered that in just personal taste. I wanted to put in a little bit of Radiohead there, even though you probably can't hear it very well in the mix. Next, we've got this lead synth FX. Let me just play that for you. This is one of the Blade Runner sounds. Bip, bip, bip. So this is rhythmical, and again, it's what I call ear candy. It's in the background of the track. It adds a little bit of a... What it does is it hints at the sounds from Blade Runner, which when you're writing a score, you want to hint at things that people recognize. And we were writing a sci-fi score for a documentary that features a number of sci-fi movies, and we wanted to allude to those memories in a way. So using those kind of sounds sprinkled over a song is something that's something I find quite cool. Next, we've got, yeah, this is another Blade Runner sound. These sounds are all very similar, but they're in different parts of the frequency of the EQ range. So they create a bigger, fuller sound. You wouldn't often duplicate the same MIDI. You would try to write something that complements it, that harmonizes. Maybe a chord that's slightly similar, slightly different, or moved up an octave in order to create more space. Next, we've got, this is... I think this, again, it's another Blade Runner sound from that pack. I've got the Super VHS on here, and what that is it's a mix, actually. It's tape saturation, chorus. They call it drift, wash, and heat. It adds that 80s tape warble. I mean, I use it to make things sound warmer or to sound more 80s, more analog. Especially if you feed a synth through it. It just gives it a bit of color and more interest. I mean, you'll notice these are all playing the same thing, but I've just switched instruments at different parts of the song. Just changes things up for the listener. I mean, this will be the same thing, but panned slightly from this. So yeah, you can see these are both playing the same thing, but I've got them panned a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. That creates two different signals on each ear, and it's more interesting. It's got more texture. Okay, we've got our bass. another Blade Runner sound. Fast Runner. I've got that feeding through some Super VHS to give it a bit more of that warp. I've cut quite a lot of the low end out. The reason I've done that, and you might wonder because it's bass, is because this is going to be the a part of the bass. I'm going to layer this up. Well, I did layer this up with a lower bass, and I'll show you that bass sub. Now listen to these together. So you get that nice low end sub. Perfect example of why you use EQ. You shape the sound of the entire bass by layering two bass sounds together, but cutting or boosting the EQ so that they complement each other. Now this sounds like just one bass, doesn't it? But I've made it by combining the bass sub and this texture, this slightly electronic texture on top. I think this is the growl. This is a very interesting sound. Yeah, that's another sound from the Blade Runner pack. It's got that. I mean, that to me sounds like a spaceship. It sounds like a spaceship landing or taking off, and I wanted to invoke that, even if it's subconsciously, to the listener. So the vibe of the song is almost like to me, you know, I like to visualize things, and it's like a spaceship taking off, or you know, going into space, and that ties in with the score, and you want to use those sounds to evoke those kind of feelings. I mean, not everyone's going to visualize it like that, but you want to, that's your job when you're scoring, and you know, you've got those kind of themes. Let's get to the bass end. It's just another sub bass. As the song progresses, it gets heavier. I wanted there to be more bass in the low end. Can you hear that? You wouldn't always layer so many basses together. It can become quite muddy, but I've got each of these basses taking up a certain frequency so they'll complement each other, and I'm bringing in that even lower sub at the end just to give it that extra grit, because at this part of the song it starts getting quite heavy. Now this last section is something I use on a lot of tracks, particularly heavier tracks. Now I use a synth called Zeta 2 by Cakewalk. Now this sound I actually heard on a James Blake song. He's a pop artist, electronic artist. Now I heard this sound, it's so distinctive, and I don't think anybody had ever done it in pop music, at least, and I immediately wanted to find out how to do it. I figured it out, and I was able to recreate it using Zeta, and then I use it heavily on loads of songs. It sounds like a siren. I'll play it so you can hear. No, that's just a... I've got each of these just coming in after each other, a bit of a delay, so it's like a siren that's constantly falling. I even bring in a second one here. Now these top two sound a bit like an organ. I mean, it's basic. I think it's a basic square wave. I'm just holding the chords that I held earlier. I mean, it's quite similar to what I did in Dream Shapes, where... See, that's just a minor chord turning major, which is something that's used a lot in sci-fi music. Just moving the middle note up or down. See how epic that sounds now with the rest of the track? Right, now it's actually quite hard to hear. I'm going to remix this track. I'm going to be honest, this track has been mixed and this is the final version. But I've since listened because it was on such a tight deadline. I've since listened and made it my mission to remix it from scratch so that I could replace the old version. And we're going to do that in the next video.